hip hop, hip hop, hip
Bars is back.
hip hop,
Sam
hip
and
hop,
oh
hip
God,
hop.
what's
Hip
up with you?
Yes.
Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Oh God, driving Sam and riding passenger side, and you heard it out the mouth of the greatest rapper alive. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Hip hop uncensored is the vibe, so subscribe. Oh God, driving Sam and riding passenger side, and you heard it out the mouth of the greatest rapper.
He made the case worse. He made it worse for Tory Lanez all throughout this proceeding, opening the door to evidence that otherwise would not have come in. Evidence like the evidence of Kelsey's September testimony that never should have come into trial. That never would have come into trial, but for the fact that he continued during his cross-examination to try to suggest that she somehow had been pressured into making those statements. Okay, well, now you have opened the door to the entire statement to come in so that the prosecution can disprove what you just said, that she's been pressured. So now let's show this the tape so that we can show that she wasn't pressured. That's terrible. Terrible. The song, the rap song that Kelsey did, the defense introduced that song. They tried to introduce only part of the song. But the rules of evidence are pretty clear. There's a rule called the rule of completeness. And so if you only bring in part and you try to suggest that that part says a thing, but there's a other part that says some other things, then the other part is coming in too. And he opened the door for that. So now we got a whole song from Kelsey where she actually is denying that she shot Meg. The worst thing that he did was he called a witness that the prosecution didn't even call, a defense witness that put a gun in his client's hand. Why would you do that? Why would you do that as a defense lawyer? Why would you do that?
Right.
No rhyme or reason. Because up until that point, he had a shot. I think he had a shot. Right? Because there was only the prosecution's evidence that put a gun in Tory's hand. But now you have a defense witness doing it as well. Problematic.
So let me ask you this, because as we speak live now at 5:13 Eastern Time PM, juries are still deliberating. This is coming by way of Shade Room. The judge said that if they don't come to a verdict by 4:30 PM today, when court closes, they have the option to resume tomorrow or take Friday off, which will stretch deliberations past the holiday, resuming Tuesday.
Yes.
Now, the way you just articulated your displeasure for the defense attorneys and Tory Lanez's situation, it kind of gives me the vibe that you think he's going to be found guilty because of what is happening. What's your overall thoughts on that?
I'll repeat this. I think I've been saying it everywhere. I don't believe that the prosecution proved that he intended to shoot anyone. But I think that coupled with the testimony from the prosecution and the defense's witness, I think that it has been established beyond a reasonable doubt that he did possess a firearm. He did shoot and discharge that firearm, resulting in someone being injured. I think they've proven that. And so all of this other stuff, right? This was inconsistent. This person lied about that. That person lied about that. All of that can still be true, right? And the jury can say, okay, that person lied about that, but this part of their story is supported by this part of some other story that's also supported by that story and the evidence, right? So people say, you pick me, you're piecemealing. That's what the jury's gonna do. They're gonna go look at the evidence and they're gonna see what of it is corroborated by other of it, if that makes sense, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what we're looking at. And my thing is that as a Black people, we need to manage our expectations, right? Because when we manage our expectations, we manage our disappointments. And the problem I'm having is that there are a lot of lawyers that have no criminal experience whatsoever that are out here telling untruths or giving information that is intellectually dishonest, right? Let me give you an example. I saw a report that the guy, one of the Jaquan, was his name Quan? He's the driver. He showed up at one of the last day of trial. And then I saw a report that the judge wouldn't let him testify. But it turns out that that wasn't the case. It turned out that the judge says, okay, if you want to let him testify, then this is going to take us way past Christmas. Both the prosecution and the defense was like, we don't want to do that. The prosecution was like, I'm going to need a little more time to cross-examine him if the defense wants to put him on. We're going to have to extend this past Christmas. Neither party wanted to do that. They agreed not to call him so that they could move forward. But that's not how it was sold, right? And so people are like, oh, the judge is not fair. See, they railroading Tory Lanez. Because that's what we're used to, right? We're used to a system that's not fair to us. And so you're triggering us. You're triggering us. And so those of us who don't have that discernment and don't have that trained ear, don't understand that we've been gaslit, right? We're being gaslit.
So, two questions. According to the evidence that you've seen, looks like you've been watching the trial pretty closely. What do you think happened that night? And two, what do you think the outcome is going to be? Do you think he's going to be charged with everything, or can you kind of break that down?
So I don't know what happened that night.
As far as like evidence wise, like what they're
so the evidence seems to suggest that there were 4 people in the car coming from a gathering. There was an argument in the car between the 2 celebrities, that the argument was about pretty much who's a better artist. And there were some shots taken by Meg that, you were to Tory, that he only was successful because he was on a Jack Harlow song, and right. And so given what I know about Tory Lanez's disposition, right, we look at what happened with August, and it doesn't seem beyond the pale that they got into an altercation. They pulled out, and that altercation spilled onto the street. I don't know who did what, but at some point, that young man had a firearm in his hand, and he discharged it. That's all that I need to know as a juror. That's really all that a juror needs to know. Whether or not Meg told an inconsistent story, that's something they can consider. But even that, the judge is going to instruct them that you can consider if someone told a falsehood, if you think that person lied about a material fact in this case, you can reject so much of that testimony that you believe to be untrue, and you can accept so much of the testimony you believe to be true. So maybe someone could say, yeah, she lied about fucking Tory Lanez. She lied about that, obvious, right? But she didn't lie about being shot in the foot. That those 2 things can exist in the same space. They're reconcilable, right? And so I think a lot of people are jumping to the conclusion that simply because she lied about the sexual relationship, then she lied about everything else. A jury can make that conclusion, but they don't have to. They don't have to. In fact, they could accept her explanations for why she was inconsistent or why she lied, right? Her explanation. One, I was afraid for my life. You saw the video.
Mm-hmm.
Police have them on the ground, spread out. That is an incredibly traumatizing experience, right? And so at that moment, she didn't feel safe to disclose what really happened to her. I could buy that. I think most people can, right? Given the climate and the relationship that Black people have with the police and law enforcement, given what we see and how they were treated, I think that we can, I don't have a problem accepting that.
I want to go back a few questions when you were speaking on the defense. I didn't ask you why. Why do you feel like, do you feel as though the defense made errors that just could have been fixed, like that was professional errors on their part, or do you think it was something deeper to that, where they're potentially even railroading this man?
No, I would never suggest that, that a lawyer would take a case simply to throw it. Criminal defense work is a different kind of animal. Everybody is not cut out to do it, right? And because there's a part of it that has to do with training and experience and education, but there's a part of it that has to do with intuition, right? A little bit of street knowledge. These are the things that you don't learn in school, and everybody doesn't have it. You don't have those insights. Everybody doesn't have those insights. And I think they made a colossal mistake from the very beginning. Their opening statement saying that Kelsey was the shooter. You hadn't seen any evidence. There was no evidence presented yet. That was not necessary. Not necessary. Again, trying to get in front of the evidence. Let it come to you. Because I'll tell you, as a criminal defense attorney, what he could have done is he could have shut the fuck up on opening, right? And said something very mundane, like keep an open mind. It's not going to be what you think it is, not going to be what they said it is. And when I come back, you're going to see, right? Keep it light. You keep it, you keep it to the point where you're not boxing yourself in. Then you let the evidence come in. Once the evidence had come in, had he not put that Sean Kelly witness on, he could have made an argument and said, listen, what this evidence suggests is that Kelsey had the gun and that at some point she discharged that weapon and my client was trying to protect some, you know what I mean? So, but this was without Sean Kelly, right? Before they put him on, it was still up in the air. There was all kinds of reasonable doubt. And I think he could have prevailed at that juncture. But then they put the defense witness on. And he corroborated the prosecution's case. Even if some of what he said didn't pan out or didn't seem to be reasonable, the parts that he did say, I saw the short guy, I saw the small gentleman, right? I saw him. He very clear that he had a gun in his hand and he was shooting everywhere. That's problematic. You just, I know everyone wants to just forget about that, but you can't because the jury's not. They're not. So I think that he will be found guilty on the negligence count. I don't think he'll be found guilty on the intent.
Wow. Now, Meg Thee Stallion's bodyguard, I know he went missing. He never testified. Is that going to play any role in the final verdict, you think? Because he got text messages that night. He didn't witness it, but he got different text messages. He's key to the story. How does that play into it?
So the text messages which came from Kelsey are in evidence.
Okay.
Right? They're in evidence. So the fact that he's not there doesn't necessarily add or take anything away. Okay. The only thing the prosecution wanted to call him for is because they said at some point after the shooting, he went to Tory Lanez and Tory Lanez confessed, right? Or he apologized, he said something that incriminated himself. And so Justin was supposed to come and tell that story, right? So he didn't come, but the text message is still in. So I don't know that it did anything to help Tory Lanez that he wasn't there necessarily because the text message is still there.
And he doesn't get in trouble for that, right? Not showing up. No type of trouble. Okay.
No.
Voluntary.
I mean, if his information was so material, they could have arrested him under material witness warrant and locked his ass up until it was time for him to testify. Prosecutors have that power.
Right.
If they had any idea that he would leave or be a flight risk or anything that's crazy.
Right. Absolutely. The thing about the other side of that, though, is there is something called a missing witness charge, right? So if the prosecution has a witness and that witness has absconded or is just not able to be found, and you believe that witness would have had information that would have been helpful to the defense, then you can make an application to the court that they should instruct the jury to draw an adverse inference from the fact that this witness has not testified. What that means is that you could say to yourself, yo, if he'd have came, he'd have said some shit that'll help Tory. And the fact that he didn't come, I'm going to wait. I think that's reasonable doubt. Right. But that instruction didn't come. I don't even know if an application was made to request that instruction. Right. So as far as I know, there was no adverse inference charge. So the jurors are not allowed to consider who is not there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. You can find me on social media under Ike Speaks, IKIE Speaks, Ike Speaks. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and you can find my website at ikespeaks.net.
Definitely appreciate you once
All
again.
right, guys.
Gotta
Y'all
get you
stay up.
more. All right.
All right.
All right. Take it
Peace.
easy.
Thank you. Take care. Yes.